Imagine walking into an empty room. No movement, no sound, nothing demanding your attention. Most people would say nothing is happening. They're wrong. An empty room is not neutral. It is unfinished. Reality does not fully exist, independent of perception. It stabilizes when observed. Until then, it remains fluid, undefined, waiting for orientation. Your brain operates the same way. What you consistently notice becomes real. What you ignore collapses into the background, not because it isn't there, but because it isn't being selected. This is the core of the empty room theory. Every moment, reality presents countless possibilities. Your attention acts as a spotlight, locking certain outcomes into form while others fade. Over time, this repeated act of noticing becomes identity, and identity becomes destiny. Most people walk through life with their attention hijacked by fear, habit, noise, and inherited assumptions. They keep looking at the same corners of the room, so the room never changes. They call it fate, but nothing is forcing their focus. The world you experience is not a fixed environment. It is a feedback system. When you look for threat, reality sharpens danger. When you look for lack, reality reflects scarcity. When you look for opportunity, patterns reorganize to reveal paths you didn't see before. This audiobook is not about imagination or blind optimism. It is about precision. You'll learn how attention shapes perception, how perception reinforces belief, and how belief quietly programs what feels possible. The empty room does not fill itself. It responds. The moment you change where you look, the room changes with you. Reality isn't resisting you. It's waiting for you to notice what you've been trained not to see. Chapter 1. The Fog of War. Imagine you are standing in the center of a vast and ancient forest. It is the middle of the night. You hold a single lantern in your hand. The flame is steady and bright. It casts a warm circle of light around your boots. Inside that circle, the world is vivid. You can see the intricate texture of the moss. You can see the sharp edges of the stones. You can see the individual blades of grass bending under the weight of the dew. Inside the circle, reality is high definition. It is undeniable. It is solid. But look just beyond the edge of that light. What do you see? You see nothing but a wall of heavy velvet darkness. You assume the forest continues forever. You assume there are trees and rivers and mountains stretching out for miles in every direction. Your logic tells you that the world is complete and continuous. But your eyes tell you a different story. Your eyes tell you that the world ends where the light stops. This is the fog of war. If you have ever played a real-time strategy game or a vast open-world simulation, you know this mechanic intimately. When you start the game, the map is shrouded in black. You are the commander, and you are the camera. As you move your units forward, the blackness recedes. Terrain pops into existence. Resources appear. Enemies reveal themselves. The graphics engine paints the world in real time. It renders the trees and the buildings only when you are there to witness them. Why do game designers build worlds this way? It is a matter of efficiency. It is a matter of resource management. To render every single leaf on every single tree in a massive digital world requires an immense amount of processing power. If the computer tried to draw the entire map at once with perfect detail, the system would crash. The processor would overheat. The simulation would freeze. So, the system cheats. It only draws what you are looking at. It only processes the data that is relevant to your immediate perspective. The rest of the world is merely code. It is a dormant potential waiting for you to arrive. Now take a breath and look away from the screen. Look at the room around you. Look at the walls. Look at your hands. Ask yourself a question that sounds simple, but carries a terrifying weight. Is this reality any different? We are raised to believe that the physical world is a static stage. We believe that the set is built and the props are placed long before we walk into the room. We believe that if everyone vanished from the earth tomorrow, the coffee cup on your desk would remain exactly as it is forever. We think of reality as something fixed and heavy, something that exists independent of our observation. But what if that assumption is wrong? What if the universe operates on the same principle of efficiency as your computer? What if the reality you experience is a render that only loads when you turn your head to look at it? Consider the room behind you right now. You know it is there. You can visualize the furniture. You can remember the color of the paint. But at this exact second, while your eyes are fixed forward, does that room exist in high definition? Or does it exist as a blurry, low-resolution probability? Is it possible that the atoms of the chair behind you are not currently vibrating as a solid object, but are instead floating in a hazy state of potential, waiting for your gaze to snap them back into position? This is not magic. This is not fantasy. This is a question about the fundamental architecture of perception. Let us look at the hardware responsible for this render. Let us look at the machine inside your skull. Your brain is a sealed vault. It sits in total darkness, encased in bone. It has never seen a sunset. It has never touched a jagged rock. It has never tasted a lemon. It only receives electrical impulses from your sensory organs. It takes these sparse, noisy signals and it constructs a model. Your brain is the most sophisticated graphics card in existence. It takes a flood of raw data and filters it down to what is necessary for your survival. It ignores the vast majority of information surrounding you. It focuses on movement. It focuses on contrast. It focuses on threats. It fills in the gaps with memory and prediction. When you move your eyes from left to right, there is a split second where your vision actually cuts out. This is called saccadic masking. Your eyes are moving too fast to process the image, so your brain pauses the live feed. It effectively puts up a loading screen. But you never see the darkness. You never see the glitch. Your brain stitches the two scenes together so seamlessly that you perceive a continuous pan. It edits the film in real time to hide the cut. If your brain is willing to fake a continuous image to save processing power, why should we assume the external world is any different? Think about the peripheral vision. Look straight ahead and hold your hand out to the side. You can see your hand, but you cannot count your fingers. The resolution drops specifically at the edges of your view. The center of your vision is 4K ultra-high definition. The edges are pixelated and blurry. The render quality degrades where your focus is not applied. This is exactly how a virtual reality headset works. It is called foveated rendering. The computer tracks your eye and only puts maximum detail exactly where you are looking. Everywhere else is blurry to save energy. Nature loves efficiency. Nature never wastes energy. Why would nature maintain the atomic precision of a falling leaf in a forest where no one is standing? Why would it calculate the precise trajectory of a dust mote in an empty room? It creates a waste of resources. The fog of war theory suggests that reality is a dialogue. It is an interaction between the observer and the field of information. You are not just walking through a world, you are summoning it. Your attention is the cursor that requests the data. When you walk into your kitchen, the refrigerator does not just exist, it loads. The hum of the compressor initiates, the cold air renders, the white light creates the interior. This perspective shifts the ground beneath your feet. It suggests that you are surrounded by a void of unrendered potential. The silence of an empty house is not just the absence of sound, it is the absence of processing. The darkness of a closet is not just a lack of photons, it is a lack of data. You might feel a resistance to this idea. You might slam your hand on the table to prove its solidity. You say that the table is hard, the table is real, the table hurts your hand. And you are correct. The table is real. But it is real because you engaged with it. You initiated a collision. You forced the simulation to calculate the resistance of the wood against the flesh of your palm. You forced the physics engine to execute the code for impact and pain. Before you struck the table, it was merely a probability. It was a geometry file sitting on a hard drive. Your action brought it into the active memory. This brings us to the edge of the fog. We are walking through life, holding our little lanterns. We illuminate the path, step by step. We trust that the ground will be there when we put our foot down. We trust that the sun will rise when we look east. We trust the consistency of the render. But sometimes the system lags. Sometimes we see things that do not make sense. We experience déjà vu, which feels like a loop in the code. We see movement in the corner of our eye that vanishes when we turn to look at it. We hear our name called in a crowded room when no one spoke. Are these just misfires of the brain? Or are they moments where the render failed to load fast enough? Are they glimpses into the wireframe structure underneath the surface? The fog of war is not just about what is hidden. It is about what is waiting. The reality you inhabit is responsive. It is waiting for you to make a move. It is waiting for you to choose a direction. The map is blank until you explore it. This makes you an active participant in the unfolding of the world. You are not a passive observer watching a movie that was filmed 1,000 years ago. You are playing the game live. You are pushing back the boundaries of the unknown with every glance and every step. The room is empty until you enter it. The sound is silent until you hear it. The world is a dormant stage waiting for the actor to step into the light. As we move deeper into this inquiry, we must peel back another layer. If reality is a render, then what is the source of the data? If the physical world is the interface, then what is the operating system running in the background? We have established that the map loads as you move, but we have not yet asked who designed the map. We are standing at the edge of the circle of light. The fog is swirling around us. The shapes in the darkness are shifting. To understand what lies beyond the render, we have to be willing to turn off the lantern and let our eyes adjust to the dark. We have to look at the glitches not as errors, but as clues. We will continue to map this terrain. We will continue to push the scout units forward into the black. But the journey gets more difficult from here. The logic of the daylight world does not apply in the deep code. If you wish to keep this channel open and ensure you do not miss the next transmission, please take a moment to subscribe. It helps us maintain the signal. It ensures that when the next segment loads, you will be there to witness it. The simulation continues only as long as you are watching. Chapter 2. The Lazy Loader. Imagine for a moment that you are standing in the center of a vast and detailed digital landscape. It is a world built of polygons and textures and light. To your left, there is a mountain range capped with snow. To your right, there is a sprawling city that hums with traffic. In front of you, the ocean stretches out to meet the horizon. It looks complete. It looks solid. But you know the secret of this world. You know that if you were to suddenly spin around with impossible speed, you might catch the machine off guard. You might see the empty gray void where the world has not yet been drawn. This is a concept well known to software engineers and game designers. They call it frustum culling or occlusion culling. It is a technique born of necessity. Computing power is finite. To render an entire universe in real time requires more energy than the system can provide. So, the machine cheats. It only draws what the camera can see. The mountain behind you does not exist as a mountain. It exists only as a line of code. It waits in a state of dormant data until you turn your head. As your gaze sweeps across the void, the machine frantically builds the geometry and paints the textures just milliseconds before your eye creates the image. This is efficiency. This is resource management. This is the lazy loader. Now let us take this mechanical principle and apply it to the fabric of our physical reality. We like to believe that the world is objective and permanent. We believe that when we leave our bedroom in the morning, the bed remains there in its solid state. We assume the dresser continues to hold its shape, and the dust motes continue to dance in the sunlight, even when the door is closed and the room is empty. It feels safe to believe this. It grounds us. But modern physics has begun to whisper a different story, a story that sounds suspiciously like a rendering engine. Consider the nature of matter itself. When we drill down past the molecules and the atoms, we find subatomic particles, electrons, and photons. These are the building blocks of everything you can touch and see. Logic dictates that these blocks should be like tiny marbles, solid and definite, fixed in place regardless of who is watching. But they are not. When these particles are not being observed, they do not behave like marbles. They behave like waves. They exist in a state of probability. They are not here or there. They are everywhere and nowhere at once. They are a cloud of potential, a hazy fog of could be. It is only when a measurement is made that the wave collapses. It is only when the observer looks that the particle snaps into a single, definite position. This is not philosophical speculation. This is the heart of quantum mechanics. It is the double-slit experiment. It is the fundamental mystery that has haunted physicists for a century. The universe seems to withhold the specific details of reality until a conscious interaction demands them. This brings us back to the empty room. If the universe operates on principles of efficiency, then why would it maintain the high energy cost of a solid reality where no one is present to experience it? Perhaps the room you just left has dissolved, not into nothingness, but into information. The chair is no longer a collection of hard wood and soft fabric. It is a probability wave. It is a file sitting on a hard drive, waiting to be opened. The moment you turn the handle and push the door open, the wave function collapses. The data loads. The render completes. The chair is there, solid and reassuring, just as you expected it to be. This is the theory of the lazy loader applied to existence. It suggests that reality is not a static stage that we walk across. It suggests that reality is a dynamic performance that responds to our presence. We are not merely walking through a world, we are summoning it with every step. The ground becomes solid because your foot is descending. The light becomes visible because your eye is open. Think about the implications of this for your daily life. It changes the texture of the mundane. You are walking down a busy street. The faces of the strangers passing by are vivid and detailed. You see the worry lines on a forehead. You see the scuff marks on a shoe. But what of the street 2 blocks over, the one you decided not to take? Does the traffic light there cycle from green to red if there are no cars to stop and no pedestrians to wait? Or does it sit in a suspended state of abstraction, a potential traffic light in a potential city? This perspective is not about arrogance. It is not about believing that you are the center of the universe, or that you possess magical powers to conjure matter from the ether. It is about understanding the relationship between the observer and the observed. It is a rejection of the idea that the world is a rigid container. Instead, it posits that the world is a responsive interface. Let us go deeper into the sensation of the glitch. If reality is a render, then occasionally the processor might lag. Have you ever experienced a moment of déjà vu so potent it felt like a stutter in a video recording? Have you ever seen something out of the corner of your eye that vanished when you turned to look at it directly? We usually dismiss these moments. We blame fatigue. We blame the tricks of light and shadow. We blame the fallibility of the human brain. But view these moments through the lens of the lazy loader. Perhaps what you saw in your peripheral vision was the unrendered state, the wireframe of reality before the texture was applied. Perhaps that feeling of unreality that sometimes washes over you in a crowded room is the system straining under the load. The sensation that the world is thin, that if you were to scratch the surface, you would find not atoms, but silence. There is a profound efficiency to this marvel. Nature is notoriously miserly with energy. It follows the path of least resistance. It evolves to conserve resources. Why would the fundamental architecture of space-time be any different? A universe that renders every atom in every star in every galaxy, regardless of observation, is a universe of colossal waste. A universe that renders only the observed is elegant. It is streamlined. It creates the illusion of infinity with finite resources. This brings us to a somewhat unsettling realization. If the world creates itself in front of you, then what is behind you? It is a primal fear. The feeling of being watched is common, but the feeling of being followed by nothingness is far more existential. When you stand in front of a mirror, you see your reflection. You see the room behind you reflected in the glass. The simulation is complete because the mirror extends your line of sight. The data must be loaded because you can see it. But close your eyes. In the darkness of your own mind, the visual world ceases to exist. The sounds remain. The sensation of gravity remains. But the visual render is paused. You are saving the system energy. When you open your eyes again, the world does not fade back in. It is instant, faster than the speed of light. The continuity is seamless. This seamlessness is what convinces us of solidity. We cannot catch the universe in the act of creation, because the act of looking is the trigger for creation. We are stuck in a loop of our own perception. We cannot see the loading screen because we are the cursor. Let us return to the house we visualized in the prologue. You are walking down the hallway. You are approaching the closed door at the end. Under the old model of reality, you assume that behind that door is a fixed room. There is furniture arranged in a specific way. There is air circulating. There is a history to that room that continues to unfold, whether you enter it or not. Under the lazy loader model, you are approaching a threshold of probability. The door is the boundary between the rendered and the unrendered. As your hand touches the knob, you are initiating a request. You are asking the system to retrieve the data for that room. You turn the knob. The system accesses the memory of what that room should look like. It pulls the files. It calculates the lighting. It positions the atoms. You push the door open, and there it is, the room, perfect and whole. You might argue that this changes nothing. If the room appears instantly and accurately every time, then the distinction between a real room and a rendered room is meaningless. The experience is identical. But the distinction matters because it shifts the locus of reality. It means that the world is not something that happens to you. It is something that happens with you. It implies a partnership between the consciousness and the canvas. This theory also invites a certain skepticism about the horizon. Look at the sky at night. You see stars that are millions of light years away. You are told they are giant burning spheres of gas. And indeed, if you use a telescope to measure them, they behave exactly as giant burning spheres of gas should. But until you looked, were they there? Or was there simply a placeholder, a background texture painted on the dome of the sky to give the impression of depth? If you fly in a plane and look down at the patchwork of fields and cities below, you are seeing the high-resolution texture map. The people down there are invisible specks. Do they possess complex internal lives at that moment? Or does the system simplify them into crowd data to save processing power? It is a vertigo-inducing thought. It isolates you. It places you in a bubble of immediate experience, surrounded by a vast ocean of dormant data. But we must remain grounded. We are not speaking of magic. We are speaking of the mechanics of perception and the strange rules of the quantum realm. The lazy loader is a metaphor, but it is a metaphor that fits the data surprisingly well. It explains the dual nature of light. It explains the observer effect. It explains why the universe appears so fine-tuned for life. It is fine-tuned because it is being rendered for the observer. As we move forward into the next chapter, we must carry this unease with us. We must walk through our days with the suspicion that the walls are only solid because we are leaning against them. We must consider that the silence in the other room is absolute. Not the silence of a quiet space, but the silence of a void. The reality you know is a cone of vision extending from your eyes. Everything else is waiting in the dark, waiting for you to turn your head, waiting for the command to load. This is the efficiency of the dream. This is the economy of the illusion. And you are the engine that drives it. You are the reason the lights turn on. Without you, the theater is dark. Without you, the script sits unread. The stage is empty. The props are stored. The universe is holding its breath, waiting for the observer to arrive, waiting for you to open the door. Chapter 3. The Tree in the Forest. We have all heard the riddle. It is old and worn, like a stone in a river. It has been passed down through centuries of philosophy and late-night debates until it lost its edge. The question is simple. If a tree falls in a forest, and no one is around to hear it. Does it make a sound? Most people answer this with a shrug. They appeal to common sense. They say, of course it makes a sound. Sound is just a physical wave moving through the air. The tree crashes. The branches snap. The ground shakes. The air is displaced. Whether a human ear is there to capture it or not is irrelevant. The event happened. The physics took place. The reality is solid and independent of our presence. That is the comfortable answer. That is the answer of a world that is fixed and permanent. But we are not here to discuss comfort. We are here to discuss the architecture of the empty room. We are here to ask if the room even exists when you close the door. Let us walk into that forest together. Picture it in your mind. A dense woodland of pine and oak. The air is cold. The ground is covered in a thick carpet of needles. It is ancient and still. Now, imagine a massive oak tree losing its battle with gravity. It tips. It gathers speed. It strikes the earth. In the classical view of the world, the forest is always there. It sits there waiting for you. It ages and grows and dies regardless of your attention. But let us look at this through the lens of the lazy loader we discussed in the previous chapter. Let us look at this through the logic of a simulation that is trying to save energy. If reality is a render, only loading what is necessary, then the answer to the riddle changes. If no one is around to hear the tree fall, then the tree does not fall. In fact, the tree is not even there. The forest itself is not there. The coordinates for the forest exist. The mathematical probability of the tree exists. The data describing the texture of the bark and the smell of the pine needles sits on the hard drive of reality. But until you or another observer step into that grid sector, nothing is rendered. There is no three-dimensional model. There is no sound file playing. There is only a void of potential. This sounds like madness to the pragmatic mind. It feels like an insult to the solidity of the ground beneath our feet. Yet this is exactly what our deepest explorations into the building blocks of matter suggest. When we look at the smallest pieces of our universe, we find that they are not tiny rocks. They are not solid marbles bouncing around. They are waves of probability. An electron does not exist in a specific place. It exists in a cloud of possible places. It is everywhere and nowhere at once. It is a ghost. This ghost only becomes a solid object when we measure it, when we look, when we force it to decide where to be. This is not a metaphor. This is the observer effect. The act of observation forces the universe to render a specific outcome from a menu of infinite possibilities. So let us return to the forest. You are the player in this game. You are walking down a path. Behind the hill in front of you, there is nothing. It is empty data. As you crest the hill, the engine of reality kicks in. It quickly renders the geometry of the trees. It applies the textures of the leaves. It calculates the lighting of the sun filtering through the branches. It loads the soundscape of the wind. It happens instantly. It happens so fast that your brain cannot catch the glitch. You perceive a continuous world. You believe the forest was there waiting for you for 1,000 years. But it was only built the moment your eye line intersected with the coordinates. This brings us to a terrifying implication, the empty room theory. Think about the room behind you right now. You are likely sitting in a chair or walking down a street. You can feel the space you occupy. But what about the space behind your back? What about the room next door? If we follow the logic of the render, then the room next door is dark. Not dark because the lights are off. Dark because there is no space there. It has been offloaded to save memory. The furniture is gone. The walls are gone. It has dissolved back into the code. It is only when you turn the handle and push the door open that the room reassembles itself. The chair slides back into position. The dust motes execute their floating animation. The reality snaps into place exactly as you expect it to be. This creates a seamless illusion of permanence. It feels like the world is a stage that is fully set, even when the audience has gone home. But why would a system waste resources on an empty theater? It makes much more sense to strike the set the moment the actors leave. You might argue that this is solipsism. You might say, this makes you the center of the universe. That is not the claim here. You are not the creator of the reality. You are the trigger for the render. You are the cursor moving across the screen. When you look at the stars, you are not creating them. You are forcing their light to land. You are collapsing the wave function of a photon that has traveled for millions of years just to interact with your retina.
Until that interaction, the photon was just a ripple in the electromagnetic field. It was a possibility. You made it a fact. Let us go deeper into the glitch. If reality is waiting for you to look, then what happens when you look away? Does the world dissolve immediately? Or is there a buffer, a cache? Think about how you move through a city. You walk past a building. You see the brickwork. You see the reflection in the windows. Then you pass it. It leaves your field of vision. Does it vanish instantly? Perhaps it fades, like a dream waking up into morning. The sharp edges soften. The colors turn to gray. The solid matter turns to mist. And finally, the mist evaporates into numbers. This explains why we sometimes feel a strange sense of unreality when we are alone in new places. The silence of a hotel room, the emptiness of a deserted highway at night. It feels different. It feels thin. Maybe that is because the system is running on low power. It knows you are the only observer, so it does not bother with the high-definition textures. It gives you the basic geometry and nothing more. We treat the world as if it is made of rocks and steel, but the more we investigate, the more it looks like it is made of information. Information requires a processor, and processing requires efficiency. The tree in the forest is a waste of processing power if there is no ear to validate the sound. The universe is ruthlessly efficient. It follows the path of least resistance. It does not do work that does not need to be done. So the tree stands in a superposed state. It is both standing and fallen. It is both rotting and blooming. It is all things and no things. Then you step on a twig. Snap. You enter the auditory range. The system detects an observer. It checks the probability tables. It rolls the dice. What is the likelihood the tree has fallen? The calculation runs in a nanosecond. The result is generated. Yes, the tree falls. Now the rendering engine takes over. It generates the crash. It shakes the ground beneath your feet. It creates the visual of the shattered trunk. You gasp. You think you just witnessed an event that was inevitable. You think gravity pulled the tree down. But gravity was just the rule set. The event was the render. You did not discover the fallen tree. You summoned it. This changes how we walk through the world. It makes every step an act of creation, not in a mystical sense, but in a mechanical one. You are loading the map as you move. This is why the horizon exists. It is the draw distance. It is the limit of what the system can display to you at any given time. Beyond the horizon is the unrendered, the unformed. Have you ever noticed how things seem to go wrong when you are in a rush? When you are moving too fast? You cannot find your keys. The traffic lights act strangely. The people around you seem to move like automated background characters. Maybe you are moving faster than the render. Maybe you are straining the processor. You are creating glitches because you are demanding too much data too quickly. The world blurs. The details get lost. You are running through the loading zones before the scene is set. The empty room theory strips away the comfort of a static world. It leaves us with a fluid, dynamic reality that responds to our presence. It means we are never truly alone because the environment itself is reacting to us. It is waiting for us. When you stand in front of a closed door, pause for a moment. Listen. Is there silence on the other side? That silence is not the absence of noise. It is the absence of existence. The room is waiting for your hand on the knob. It is waiting for the command to load. If you open it quickly enough, could you catch it? Could you see the wireframe walls before the wallpaper is applied? Could you see the gray geometry of the furniture before the colors are painted in? Probably not. The refresh rate is too high. The latency is too low. The system is older and faster than you are. It has been running since the first observer opened their eyes. But the thought remains. The tree in the forest does not make a sound. It does not make a sound because sound is a relationship between the vibration and the receiver. Without the receiver, there is only the vibration. And without the render, there is not even vibration. There is only code. So as we move to the next chapter, remember this. You are carrying a lantern of reality with you. Wherever you look, the world becomes real. Wherever you turn your back, the world dissolves into potential. You are walking through a dream that hardens into concrete the moment your foot touches the ground. The fog of war is everywhere, and you are the only one who can clear it. The empty room is not a scary place. It is an efficient one. It is a waiting room. It is waiting for you to enter so it can become real. And now that we understand the tree and the room, we must ask the next question. Who is watching us? If we render the tree by looking at it, who renders us? That is the question that lies behind the next door. Chapter 4. The Double Slit Mystery. We have spent a considerable amount of time wandering the metaphorical forests of our minds. We have debated whether a falling tree makes a sound if no one is there to hear it. That was a game of logic. It was a riddle designed to tease the novice philosopher. But now we must leave the abstract safety of the woods. We are heading into the cold and sterile light of the laboratory. Here the questions are not riddles. They are measurements, and the answers do not comfort us. They haunt us. Let us revisit the most famous experiment in the history of quantum mechanics. It is often called the double slit experiment. It sounds simple. It sounds like high school physics. Do not let the simplicity fool you. This experiment is the smoking gun. It is the moment the simulation blinked.
It is the moment the rendering engine of our reality was caught in the act of optimization. Picture a dark room. In the center of this room sits a device that is essentially a particle gun. It does not fire bullets made of lead. It fires electrons. These are the tiny building blocks of matter. They are the stuff that makes up the chair you are sitting on and the hand you are using to hold this device. In front of this gun stands a barrier. It is a solid wall
with two vertical slits cut into it. Behind that barrier waits a detector screen, a canvas that records exactly where the electrons land. Now let us apply common sense. If you were to dip tennis balls in paint and throw them at a wall with two holes, most would bounce off the barrier. Some would pass through the left hole, some would pass through the right hole. On the back wall, you would expect to see two vertical bands of paint, a pile on the left and a pile on the right. This is how matter behaves. It is solid. It is predictable. It travels in a straight line unless acted upon by an outside force. This is the expectation of a pre-rendered world, a world that exists whether you look at it or not. But that is not what happens. When scientists fire these electrons, something impossible occurs. They do not form two bands on the back wall. They form an interference pattern. Imagine the detector screen looks like a barcode. It shows a complex series of alternating bright and dark stripes. There are impacts in the middle where there should be nothing. There are impacts on the far edges. This is the signature of waves, not particles. It is exactly what happens when you drop two stones into a pond and the ripples cross each other. Where the peaks meet, they get higher. Where a peak meets a trough, they cancel out. The pattern on the back wall proves, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that the electrons are moving like water. But wait. We fired particles. We fired solid chunks of matter, and to make the mystery even deeper, we can fire them one at a time. Click, one electron. Click, another electron. Over time, that same wave pattern emerges. How can a single electron interfere with itself? It is as if the electron leaves the gun and dissolves into a ghost. It passes through the left slit and the right slit simultaneously. It dances with itself on the other side. It explores every possible path it could take. And then it touches the back wall and decides where to land based on a probability distribution. It behaves like a cloud of potential, not a rock. This disturbed the scientists. It violated the rules of the solid world. It suggested that matter does not have a defined location until it hits the final wall. So they did what any rational human would do. They decided to spy on it. They placed a measuring device right next to the slits. They wanted to see which hole the electron actually went through. They wanted to catch the ghost in the act. They turned on the detector and fired the gun again. And here is where the story turns into a glitch in the system. Here is where the simulation reveals its code. The moment the detector was turned on, the behavior changed. The electron stopped acting like a wave. It went back to acting like a tiny tennis ball. It went through one slit or the other. It did not pass through both. The interference pattern on the back wall vanished instantly. It was replaced by the two boring vertical bands we expected in the first place. Pause and let the weight of that sink in. The electron acted differently because it was being watched. The mere act of observation forced it to decide. When no one was looking, it was a wave of possibilities. It was everywhere and nowhere. It was a blur of data. But when the eye focused on it, the blur snapped into focus. It became a solid point in space and time. Now apply the logic of the lazy loader we discussed in the previous chapter. In a video game, the engine does not render the inside of a building until the player walks through the door. It saves processing power. It keeps the world vague until specificity is required. The double-slit experiment suggests our reality functions on the exact same architecture. The universe does not waste energy rendering physical matter when there is no observer to knead it. When you are not looking at the electron, it is not an object. It is a formula. It is a wave of potential. It is efficient code running in the background. It remains in that state of suspension endlessly, a raw, unrendered data stream. Only when you turn your head, only when you apply the pressure of consciousness or measurement, does the engine realize it must deliver a result. It collapses the wave function. It renders the pixel. It solidifies the wall. It loads the room. This is not magic, and it is not mysticism. It is mechanics. It implies that the solidity of the world is a user interface. The table you are touching is real enough to hold your coffee cup, but its fundamental nature is fluid. It hardens under your gaze. Albert Einstein hated this. He famously argued against this interpretation. He wanted to believe the moon was still there, even when he was not looking at it. He wanted a static universe, a universe that was fully rendered and stored on the hard drive of reality, waiting for us to discover it. But the data fought back. Experiment after experiment confirmed the uncomfortable truth. The universe is not static. It is responsive. The implications for the empty room theory are staggering. If the electron does not choose a path until you measure it, does the room behind you exist before you turn around? Physics tells us that unobserved states are merely probability distributions. The room is there as a probability. It is there as a potential file waiting to be opened. But it is not there as a hard rendered reality until the sensory data is requested.
We often look for glitches in the matrix to prove we are in a simulation. We look for strange coincidences or disappearing objects. But the double-slit experiment is a glitch that has been staring us in the face for a century. It is a feature of the software. It reveals the optimization protocols of existence. It tells us that reality is generated on demand. Think about the computational cost of a universe. To simulate every atom in every star, in every galaxy simultaneously is an impossible task. It would require infinite processing power. But to simulate only what the observer sees is manageable. It is efficient. The wave function is the compression algorithm. It allows the universe to store vast amounts of matter as simple probabilities. It only decompresses the file when you click on it, when you look at it. This changes how we must view the empty room. It is not a void. It is not a vacuum. It is a pregnant pause. It is a state of readiness. The furniture and the walls and the air in the room behind you are currently resting in a superposed state. They are waiting for the trigger. They are waiting for you to turn your head and force the engine to draw the lines. You are the cursor. Wherever you focus your attention, the world loads. Wherever you look away, the world unloads. We must strip away the arrogance that assumes the world exists for its own sake. The evidence suggests the world exists for the sake of the interaction. It is a relationship between the observer and the observed. Without the measurement, there is no distinct reality. There is only the fog. This is the double-slit mystery. It is the crack in the foundation of materialism. It shows us that matter is not the primary substance of the universe. Information is. The universe processes information and presents it to us as matter. The electron is not a tiny ball. It is a bit of information that reads 1 or 0, up or down, here or there. And until it is read, it is neither. We have seen the code. We have seen the render engine at work. But if the world waits for us to look before it becomes real, we must ask the next dangerous question. Who is the player and who is the non-player character? What happens when two observers disagree? The laboratory has given us the what and the how. It has shown us the mechanism of the lazy load, but it cannot give us the why. For that, we must step out of the lab and back into the street. We must look at the people around us. We must look at the timeline of our own lives. The simulation is running. It is efficient. It is optimized. And it is watching you, watching it.
Chapter 5. The User Interface. We have reached a critical juncture in our investigation. In the previous chapters, we established that the world behaves strangely when we stop looking at it. We explored the fog of war that obscures the unobserved portions of the map. We discussed the lazy loader that only renders the assets immediately in front of you. We looked at the quantum evidence suggesting that particles themselves remain in a state of probability until a measurement is made. Now, we must turn the camera around. We must look at the device that is doing the measuring. We must look at you. If reality is indeed a simulation that renders on demand, then your brain is not merely a passive observer. Your brain is the graphics card. It is the processor that takes a stream of raw, chaotic data and weaves it into the coherent tapestry you call your life. This brings us to the most unsettling realization of all. The world you see around you is not the world as it exists. The world you see is a user interface. Think about the computer or the smartphone you are using right now. Look at the icons on the screen. Perhaps there is a blue folder that represents your documents. You know intuitively what that blue folder means. It is a container for your files. You can click on it. You can drag it. You can delete it. But ask yourself this: is the blue folder real? Inside the computer, there is no blue plastic folder. There is no physical container. There are only microscopic distinct states of voltage, toggling between on and off, embedded in a silicon wafer. If the computer showed you the reality of the hard drive, you would see terabytes of binary code, a meaningless ocean of zeros and ones. It would be incomprehensible. It would be useless. So the computer lies to you. It hides the complex reality of the hardware and replaces it with a simple, colorful metaphor. The blue folder is an illusion. But it is a useful illusion.
It allows you to interact with the machine without needing to understand the electrical engineering underneath. This is exactly what your brain does with the physical universe. Evolution is the programmer. Over millions of years, natural selection has designed your senses not to show you the truth, but to hide it. If you saw reality exactly as it is, you would be overwhelmed. You would be paralyzed. Imagine for a moment that you could see the true nature of matter. Imagine that when you looked at your hand, you did not see skin and bone, but rather a swarm of quantum fields vibrating in empty space. Imagine looking at a glass of water and seeing not a clear liquid, but a chaotic, mathematical probability of hydrogen and oxygen atoms bouncing against each other at supersonic speeds. If you saw the quantum truth, you would never be able to grab the glass. You would never be able to drink. You would die of thirst while trying to calculate the position of the atoms. To keep you alive, your brain compresses the data. It takes the infinite complexity of the quantum soup and renders a simplified, localized icon. It renders a glass of water. It renders a hand. It renders a solid floor. These things are the user interface of reality. They are the desktop icons that allow you to navigate the simulation without crashing.
This suggests that our perception of the empty room is fundamentally flawed. We assume the room is empty because we do not see anyone inside it. But the room itself, the walls, the chair, the air, are only rendered as 3D objects because we are currently using the interface to interact with them. Consider the limitations of your hardware. The human eye is a biological sensor with a very specific, very narrow bandwidth. The electromagnetic spectrum is vast. It ranges from massive radio waves to microscopic gamma rays. Yet, the portion of this spectrum that humans can actually see is a sliver. It is less than 1% of the available information.
Radio waves are passing through your body right now. Wi-Fi signals are bouncing off the walls. Radiation from distant stars is raining down on the roof. You are completely blind to all of it. Your interface filters it out. It deems that data irrelevant to your immediate survival, so it does not render it. You are walking through a sea of information, but your screen only displays what you need to see to find your next meal or avoid a predator. We accept that the sky is blue and the grass is green, but color does not exist in the outside world. There is no such thing as red or blue in physics. There are only wavelengths of light. When a specific wavelength hits the retina, your brain executes a line of code. It creates the sensation of color. It paints the interface. The red of an apple is not on the apple. The red is in you. It is a tagging system your brain uses to identify a ripe fruit. It is a highlight on the item to show that it is interactive. This brings us back to the solidity of the world. The empty room theory posits that physical objects do not hold a fixed form until they are observed. This sounds impossible because the table feels solid when you touch it. You can knock on it. It hurts your knuckles. But what is that sensation of solidity? It is not matter touching matter. At the atomic level, atoms are mostly empty space. If the nucleus of an atom were the size of a marble, the electrons would be orbiting in a stadium-sized circle around it. You are made of emptiness. The table is made of emptiness. When you touch the table, your atoms never actually make contact with the table's atoms. What you feel is magnetic repulsion. The electron clouds of your atoms are pushing against the electron clouds of the table. You are feeling a force field. You are feeling a data constraint. The interface generates the sensation of solidity to tell you that you cannot pass through this object. It is a collision boundary in the code. The simulation does not allow the character to clip through the wall, so it simulates resistance. It simulates pain. These are feedback mechanisms. They are haptic responses designed to keep the user within the playable area. We must then ask what happens when the interface glitches. We experience these glitches all the time, though we often dismiss them. We call them optical illusions. We call them cognitive biases. We call them hallucinations. Look at a sophisticated optical illusion. Your brain insists that two lines are different lengths, even when you measure them and prove they are the same. Your brain insists that a static image is moving. Why does this happen? It happens because your brain is running a predictive algorithm. To save processing power, the brain does not process every single photon that enters the eye in real time. That would be too slow. Instead, the brain predicts what it expects to see. It renders the world based on past experience. The interface is guessing. It is buffering the next frame based on the previous frame. When you look at an optical illusion, you are exploiting a bug in the prediction code.
You are seeing the lag between reality and the render. This forces us to reevaluate the nature of the empty room. When you leave a room and close the door, the interface no longer needs to predict the interior. It no longer needs to render the chair or the desk. It saves that energy. It unloads the assets. The room effectively dissolves back into raw information. It becomes a probability cloud. It is a file sitting on the hard drive, waiting to be opened. It is only when you turn the handle and push the door open that the interface kicks into gear. In that millisecond, the brain retrieves the file. It reads the data. It constructs the geometry. It applies the textures. It calculates the lighting. And there, in the blink of an eye, the room appears, solid and real, exactly as you left it. You assume it was there the whole time.
You assume the light was hitting the carpet even when no eyes were there to see it. But the light is only a render. The carpet is only a texture. We are wandering through a grand, sophisticated dashboard. We treat the dashboard as the car itself, but it is just a set of dials and gauges. We treat the map as the territory. This secular understanding of reality does not require magic. It does not require a grand wizard behind the curtain. It requires only the laws of physics and the efficiency of biology. Nature is economical. Nature does not waste energy rendering a high-definition reality where no observer is present to consume it. The tree in the forest does not make a sound if no one is there to hear it. The falling tree creates air pressure waves. Those waves are silent. Sound is a creation of the ear and the brain. Sound is the interface interpreting the data of the air pressure. Without the ear, there is only wind. Without the eye, there is only radiation. Without the hand, there is only force. We are the users. We are the observers who collapse the wave function. We are the engines that turn the silence into sound and the radiation into light. So, as we prepare to move to the final stage of our inquiry, you must carry this thought with you. You are not merely living in the universe. You are the mechanism by which the universe renders itself. You are the viewport. The reality you perceive is a user-friendly simplification. It is a headset that has been fused to your face since birth. And the question that remains, the question that haunts the edges of quantum mechanics and consciousness alike, is simple. If we are wearing a headset, what are we trying to hide from? What is the raw data that is so chaotic, so overwhelming, that we had to evolve a simulation just to survive it? And more importantly, is there a way to look behind the screen? Is there a way to catch the rendering engine off guard? The user interface is robust, but it is not perfect. There are cracks in the screen. There are moments where the frame rate drops. In the next and final chapter, we will try to find those cracks. We will try to see what lies in the dark space before the pixels light up. We will try to understand the source of the signal. End of Chapter 5. The Director's Chair. We find ourselves at the end of this strange, conceptual hallway. The mechanics of the lazy loader suggest that the world remains dormant until you demand its presence. This places you in a position of unique responsibility. You are not the architect of the underlying code, but you are undoubtedly the director of the scene. When you understand that reality waits for your gaze, your attention becomes your most valuable currency. Where you focus is simply where the simulation spends its resources. If you stare into the void of anxiety, you force the system to render a nightmare. But if you turn your head toward action and clarity, the world must construct a concrete path beneath your feet. This is not magic, and it is not mysticism. It is the practical application of cognitive focus.
The screen is blank, and the cursor is blinking. You do not need to wait for the scene to start itself. Pick up the controller and choose where the camera points next. The render is waiting for you.